Managing multiple clients or large websites? Automate your SEO with Ally AI. Start your free trial now.
Taylor Swift is a link builder. There were rumors that she would get engaged. Our client said, let's give them a free wedding venue. And then we got them 50 links. That's digital PR.
Wix Studio, one end-to-end web creation platform for your agency to deliver exceptional work with absolute efficiency.
I'm going to be talking about the potential downfall of Google and why SEOs need to embrace skepticism, and ultimately why Google's growth and success and market dominance might ultimately be their downfall. If you want to follow along with the presentation, please feel free to scan the QR code. You can get a copy of the deck. I'll be showing this at the end as well, so if you've got any, So this is a graph that you guys are probably all fairly familiar seeing, but actually, what is it? It is Google's market share. So currently, Google's market share is sitting at around 92%. We have Bing, Yandex, Yahoo, Baidu, and DuckDuckGo also playing into it. And despite the recent increase in performance and growth of challenges like DuckDuckGo, they are still nothing compared to the behemoth that is Google. And ultimately, this means that a lot of businesses and a lot of websites are very beholden to Google and what they do. And ultimately, this raises questions around... Oh, yeah, sure. Hi, can you hear me a bit better there? Ultimately, this raises questions around over dominance, monopoly, and potentially abusing their position. And this is actually something that a judge has recently found, that Google has been found as owning a legal monopoly on search and taking part in antitrust practices, essentially. And this could ultimately lead to Google being broken up and separated up into different parts of the business. In the early 2000s, Google had a bit of a mantra, a bit of a code of conduct. And this might be, again, something you're familiar with, which was don't be evil. This is something that was, I believe, a very noble statement and something that's pretty clear cut. I think most people in the room would be able to agree on what is evil and what is not evil. When Google got acquired by Alphabet in 2018, there was a small but subtle change to this mantra. From don't be evil, it changed to do the right thing. And this became very much part of the code of conduct and ethos to essentially a footnote at the bottom of their HR documents. Now, this raises a few questions, because what is the right thing? The right thing could be very different to different people. What's right for one person might be the wrong thing for another. And Google is currently in a battle and balancing between what is right for the shareholders and what is right for the consumers. Now, this is a difficult battle that lots of other companies have to face, but because of Google's dominance and market share, it becomes even more important. And the cynic in me suggests that recently we've seen people shift a bit more towards the shareholder side of things and maybe less focus on the consumers. So why am I so cynical about what Google's doing? Well, ultimately, more and more data is becoming hidden. We're starting to see a lot of more not set, unknown, null data in a lot of the reports. We're seeing old reports being sunsetted and maybe not replaced. And the quality of the data that we've got is also potentially being degraded over time. A great example of this is PMax. PMax is Performance Max. It's technically Google Ads, but it's a great way to highlight how we're losing the data and what could potentially happen on organic search as well. So for those who aren't aware, Performance Max was rolled out in 2021 and essentially looked at automating campaigns across Google Ads to provide the most optimum approach to your campaign. What this does is it takes the data from your Google Ads campaigns and all the data that you've got set up in GA and GA360, does something with it, and then you get money at the end of it. So it's fantastic. So we should really trust this. But ultimately, we have no idea what is going on in the middle part here. It is essentially a black box. And the challenge with this is we have no control over what is being chosen, what is being selected here. And we're assuming that Google is operating in our best interest to provide the most profit. In most cases, this might be the case, but ultimately we lose control over what exactly they are targeting. And ultimately, this loss of data, the data degradation that we're seeing, means that we're not able to make as actionable insights as we maybe were before. And this ultimately means we have less control and greater challenges. On top of this, Google are often full of contradictions. They say one thing and then do another. We've got some examples here from Google representatives on Twitter. I'm sure many of us in the room appreciate the openness and honesty that the Google team share with us on a regular basis, and it is really, really appreciated. But often, can we take what they're saying at face value? Here we've got some examples where Google does not use domain authority, it does not favor fresh content, and we're not looking at click data and CTR to inform the algorithm update. This is all stuff that had potentially been disproven or kind of proven the other way in the recent Google leak. And what this means is that ultimately we can't necessarily trust what Google is saying at face value, because there may be stuff going on behind the scenes that they're not able to share with us, or are unable or unwilling to share as well. And this has meant that Google is now starting to favour their own products and abuse their position of power. We've seen from many recent law in their own products and services to boost their position and gain more revenue. We've seen courts in the EU where advertisers are suing Google for 13 billion. There's raises questions around the data in private tracking mode. And again, media companies are unhappy with the way that advertising is being abused on Google platforms. And a great example of this is what we see with Reddit. So this is a graph of Reddit's estimated traffic over the last 2 years. And I think you'll all agree that if this was our website, we would be very, very happy. And from from October 23, we start to see a good increase in the number of sessions and traffic coming in. This increases rapidly from February 24. And it's this area of growth that is particularly interesting. Since February 2024, there is a 224. These mics, can everyone hear me now? Hopefully that's a bit better. Since February 2024, there's been a 224% increase in traffic to the site. And year over year, that's 555%. That is absolutely incredible. Now, there's lots of reasons why this has increased, and most of you will be very familiar with seeing AI overviews, Google showing more Reddit posts in the SERP results. But why are they showing these results? Yes, users are looking for more perspective, user-generated feedback and content. But in February of 2024, Google AI signed an exclusivity deal with Reddit to use all of their user data to train their AI model. Now, where this is interesting is, how does AI get better? It needs data. The more data it has, the better that is. So it's in Google's best interest to provide it with as much data as possible. And what do we see after this? A huge increase of Reddit in the SERPs. On top of this, SEO is often being eroded in favor of paid search. This is nothing new to probably everyone in the room. But what we've seen is, over the last decades, Google Ads has started to take up more and more share of the SERP. In the early 2000s, it was super clear, distinct where ads were. They were at the top of the page, a bit down the side, but there were plenty of blue links above the fold. In 2017, and moving on through the 2010s, this became slightly murkier. Those clear, distinct ads became even more similar to the traditional blue links. And where it was really clearly highlighted that it was an ad, this is slightly more subtle with a green ad label. And then as we move into 2024, the rise of PLA and shopping ads dominate the top of the SERPs, particularly in an e-commerce space. And where those green ad links have kind of gone, we're now looking at very similar links that now just say sponsored. The increase of site link extensions as well also means that SEO traditional blue links are being pushed even further down the fold. And as we move into the AI generation, this is becoming more and more present. And ultimately, this means we're heading towards a zero-click world. I actually had a look on Google to see what are some examples of things to do in Brighton in October. Very sadly, Brighton SEO does not come up. But what we do see here is a list of top attractions that usually would come through Trustpilot or lots of other review sites, essentially, or TripAdvisor. And what we're actually finding is that because all of this is coming up at the SERPs, users are not needing to click through. And Rand Fishkin and the guys at SparkToro did a really interesting study, and they found that in the US, 59% and in 60% in Europe of clicks are not going through to site and they end up in 0 clicks. And ultimately what this means is that we are staying in the Google ecosystem. And this is beneficial for Google because staying in the ecosystem means you're open and available for ads. On top of this, there was a really interesting talk from Marcus Tober yesterday, and he said quite boldly that he thinks that the way in which AI is taking content and scraping content is the greatest theft in mankind. And at the moment, we're seeing that Google is scraping and taking content, stealing content from users, from publishers, in order to fulfill their AI overviews and to keep users within their ecosystem. And this means that publishers are most likely going to be the ones that lose out. Publishers are essentially a means to an end. They help provide the data, the sources, to provide the use for the consumers. But ultimately, Google only cares about 2 people. It cares about the users, the end users, and it cares about the shareholders. These are the only 2 people that Google realistically care about. They're the only ones that drive the business. The publishers are just a way in order to get that data. And what we're seeing is there's an increase in SERP features over time. The increase of generative AI overviews, and the overall growth and alignment of Google Ads to be more similar to traditional links means that, again, we are starting to lose a bit of control. So what can you do? There's 3 areas that I believe that you can look to adapt and take on top of the existing work that you're doing within the SEO frame. And this is to look at reframing what success looks like, adapt to new opportunities, and look for areas to re-optimize. So reframing success. If we do move to the theoretical 0-click world, what will performance look like? It's going to look bad. It's going to look bad. We report on clicks, traffic, revenue, conversions, etc. But what we are starting to see is that if we're losing clicks over time, we're going to start to have some very difficult conversations with our clients and explain why that is. And ultimately, the value behind that data becomes less important. So metrics such as CTR, clicks, sessions, and keyword rankings are going to become less and less important in the 0-click world. And instead, what we're going to have to be focusing on is more visibility metrics, looking at impressions, share of voice, what's that impact on brand, what's that resulting in direct traffic, what is your mind share. All of this is stuff that you might be reporting on already, and it's stuff that is useful, but at the moment is not a clear KPI. But it is something that we need to start bringing up more and more with the client conversations to ensure that if we do see the shift to this area, that they are well aware of what actually success might need to look like in the future. The second part here is adapting to new opportunities. I saw this headline a few weeks ago and it made me very sad inside. So Gen Z are no longer saying Google as a verb. So they don't search, well, they don't Google something, they search for it or they look it up. And actually what we're seeing is the shift in user behavior and consumer behavior to other channels away from Google. So a great study from Adobe found that TikTok is now very quickly becoming a search platform, with 49% of Americans using TikTok as a search engine, and almost 10% of Gen Z are more likely to use TikTok over Google when they're looking for search. And this kind of highlights a wider point that actually search is not just Google. It's so many touch points along the user journey. And we need to be targeting users where they're actually searching. They have different search intents across their journey, and we need to target that. So it could be making sure that we're visible on TikTok with new content so that we're getting their awareness. It could be making sure that we're optimizing and posting on Reddit so that we're helping them get more information, reviews, feedback on what that product is. And then obviously when they go to check out, we need to make sure that e-commerce sites such as Amazon are well optimized and that we're targeting them effectively. On top of this, AI overviews are obviously ramping up quite massively. Here on the graph is the growth of AI or the predicted growth of AI worldwide in terms of kind of revenue that it brings in. You can see that over the next 5-6 years, it is going to still grow exponentially. And as a result of that, AI overviews are not going to go away. Currently, 99.5% of all AI overview data is pulled from top 10 results, and 17% of all searches in the US and the UK are showing these AI overviews. So ultimately, if they're going to be here and they're going to stay, if you can't beat them, join them. So actually, how can you join them? How can you make sure that you're appearing for these AI overviews? Well, you can look to re-optimize. Now, I don't mean completely re-optimize and ignore SEO. SEO is not dead, but we can look at the rise of a few other options. We've got GEO, Generative Engine Optimization, and SXO, which is Search Experience Optimization. Now, these terms that have been thrown around for quite a while, but again, they're becoming more and more important as we move into this new era. And where SEO typically looks at technical performance, on-site performance, and off-site authority development, GEO takes a different approach. This is looking more at actually how can you optimize specifically for AI and those generative search engines. And that looks at formatting the content and the type of technical performance on the page to make sure it's easily accessible, easily crawlable, easily readable, and it's going to be presented in a way that users are searching. So it's more about schema, it's more about the technical performance, and it's more about targeting content in the right way. And then the final part here as well is SXO. And this is kind of like a marriage between SEO and CRO ultimately. You're looking to provide the best user experience that you can. And so it's very much about ensuring that on-site performance is good. You're kind of converting people. You're able to kind of guide that journey for the user as best as you can. And ultimately, Google says everything is about the user. They want to provide a good experience to the user, and therefore it makes sense that they might reward sites that are providing the best experience to their users. But across all of this, the one thing that you really need to remember to do is to embrace the skepticism, challenge what is being fed to you, look beyond what the obvious kind of data is and ask, why are they doing it? What is the subtext? What is the meaning behind why they're doing it? That will be able to help you prepare and adapt to what's been coming. And ultimately, you need to be flexible. We don't know what Google is going to say. We don't know what they're going to do. They might throw a curveball next week that everyone starts to panic about. And we know from Amy how that we can potentially deal with that panic. But ultimately, we need to kind of embrace the change that's going to come. And let's wait and see, because actually this whole Google hearing that we found from the Department of Justice could potentially be very disruptive to the search landscape. There are lots of companies that have previously been considered a monopoly. Some have fared better than others in terms of how they've come out of that. Google could become the next AT&T and be broken up into parts and sold off. Or you could be like Microsoft, Apple, and Meta and weather that storm a little bit more closely. But yeah, let's wait and see what happens. Thank you very much.
Monthly reporting making you want to shove sharp things up your nose? Try Dragon Metrics, the all-in-one SEO software with mind-blowing reporting tools.